My name is Daniel James. Welcome to Zion Zetas Symposium. I'm going to talk to you about 3 specific topics that I feel are relevant at this time. The way I'm going to deliver the content on these topics is going to be generalized and very succinct. So what I would suggest is pause the video if you need to, take any notes that you may feel are important, so that later after the program you can continue to do your own research on these specific topics. The first topic that I'm going to discuss is the concept on extraterrestrials. Okay? This is the concept that not only are extraterrestrials real, not only is the concept of extraterrestrial life a very real concept, a very tangible scenario, but we ourselves are extraterrestrial beings. I'll explain a bit more on how that concept comes into play. Many people are familiar with the race known as the Anunnaki. They're actually termed the Anu, is the actual pronunciation of their species name. Many people have read through researching ancient Egypt that these Anunnaki beings have a part in the creation of the human beings. Here's a more specific explanation as to how that works. The Anu, who were a hybrid race themselves, did come to Earth. They did actually create what you know as Homo sapien through the process of hybridization and genetics and DNA alteration. What they did was they took a local hominid species on the planet at the time known as Homo erectus. You could also say that they also used some genetics from Gigantopithecus, and you could also say that they used genetics and DNA from Sasquatch. What they did in this process is they took the DNA and the genetics from these beings that were natural and innate to this planet, and they crossed it with their own DNA amongst several other genetics and DNA material from other races. You see, we have the 12-strand double helix. Well, every strand of DNA in the double helix, the 12 strands, belong to an assortment and array of different extraterrestrial species. Extraterrestrials exist all over the galaxy, throughout every system that we have, throughout all of the universe, all of the cosmos. We have so many different systems: the solar system, Cassiopeia, Pleiades, we have Orion. The list goes on. Well, there are several hundreds of thousands of different species, similar to human and very different to human, that exist in every system. They're also not limited to our system and our galaxy and our universe. They also span deeply throughout different densities, different physical makeup. They also expand throughout different dimensions, as you know that we work within a 12-dimension system. Now, I understand that that concept may or may not be hard to absorb or hard to invest in due to the fact that we have no confirmation of scientific evidence of life on other planets, let alone intelligent, sentient beings like ourselves that exist on other planets and other densities and dimensions. This is all due to the fact that a lot of that information is withheld or suppressed and kept from us in certain ways, shapes, and forms for specific reasons, which we can then talk about later on in the program. The fact of the matter is that they do exist. They are not only among us, they are not only present, but we are extraterrestrial. They are versions of us. We are versions of them. This makes us family. Let's talk about the concept that not only do extraterrestrials exist, but we are literally family with them in many ways. Let's take the concept that you may have a brother or a sister, or a father or a mother, or a son or a daughter. These are your blood relatives. These are your DNA genetic family. Well, in a multidimensional way, from a higher perspective, we also have what's called as a soul family. Let's say from a multidimensional perspective, you have a soul family. That would be a lot bigger, wouldn't it be? It'd be a lot much more broad. That would mean that your family would be dispersed not only throughout different beings of your own race, which would be human, but that would also mean that members of your soul family would incarnate for those familiar with reincarnation and the idea that you live multiple or parallel lives amongst other perspectives. This concept is that in your soul family, you would have members of your soul family dispersed throughout other civilizations, other races. This is your beings in extraterrestrial form. This is your beings in a multidimensional form that may or may not even be non-physical. Doesn't make them any less family on a soul level. The idea here is that we experience separation from each other in a much different way than, say, for example, a being who is of lighter density or of a higher dimension experiences the concept of separation. When I look at you in a grocery store and you look at me, you perceive me as being outside of yourself, as being my own persona, my own identity. And I perceive you as being your own being and your own persona. The way many extraterrestrial races perceive humans and each other and other beings amongst other races, as they see them from that multidimensional perspective that they are indeed family on a grander scale, from the perspective of the soul. Many of these extraterrestrial beings, which I prefer to call star family, because that's what they are, they don't experience separation the way that we do. So when they observe Earth and they observe humans, they can actually identify members of their family and versions of themselves that have incarnated into a human experience. Whereas we as humans, who experience limitation from a more specific and limiting way, we can't really see that outside of ourselves. But they can. They can identify family. They can see the versions of themselves within us. This is a very loving exchange. It's a very peaceful and expansive act of love that these beings perceive Earth as. This is why I call them star family. Many of us are going to wake up to the fact that not only do extraterrestrials exist, but they love us. Many of them are very positive. Many of them are indeed family. The last concept that I'd like to discuss regarding the concept of extraterrestrials is contact. Okay, so let's talk about what forms of contact we have now and how contact may or may not look going forward. There's obviously many forms of quarantine. There's many forms of restriction on what we're allowed to know regarding the presence and the existence of our star family, which is why we know so little about them. That's why we have no forms of conscious, open contact between human and extraterrestrial races at this time. So what forms of contact do we have now? Well, this starts in sightings of craft. You would call them UFO. But these sightings of craft that, let's say you're driving down a freeway, you're driving down the thruway and you and your friends see this big shiny orb in the sky and you look at it for a moment and you say, hey, what is that? It looks very foreign. You know that it's not a plane. You know that it's something out of the ordinary. When we see these crafts, these UFOs, these are a form of contact, and I'll explain how. Every time a person, yourself, myself included, friends and family tell you that they've seen a UFO, they've seen some sort of extraterrestrial craft, you know without a shadow of a doubt that this was not a plane, this wasn't a man-made object. This is a synchronized, pre-planned sighting, okay? Because the beings on that ship, the race in that craft, these are members of your particular star family. You see, they're not bound by time and space the way that we are. They're not bound by the limitations of separation the way that humans are. So that means they can show themselves to you at the right place, at the right time, in a non-invasive way, like maybe catching a glimpse of a UFO. So to you is a very exciting and interesting and sci-fi kind of esoteric experience that you can share with your friends and family. Whereas to them, it was a pre-orchestrated, synchronized event that they knew at the right time and place you would see that craft. This is because they are members of your family. They are connected to you in a more expansive way that we are just now learning to understand. And so when you see a craft, when you see a UFO, This is a form of contact. You are making contact with an extraterrestrial when you see an unidentified flying object. Let's talk about another form of contact. Well, many people have dreams, okay? When you have a dream, when you go to bed and you go to sleep, you're not actually falling asleep and having a dream. What's actually happening is you're waking up. You see, when you go to sleep and you fall asleep and you have a dream, you're waking up in another vibrational frequency. You're waking up in another dimension. Now, the dream realm, or the dream plane, or however you'd like to call it, is a very tangible reality, actually more tangible than the waking life. And when you're in this dream dimension, all the experiences that you have, they are real. They're real like this one. Extraterrestrials, many being lighter densities and some even being non-physical, they can tap into this dream realm, into this dream plane, and they can have interactions with you in this space. And the reason that they do it in the dreams, in the dream space, as opposed to in your physical waking life, is because it's more often, it's a more non-invasive form of interaction, okay? They can help craft an environment. They can help design circumstances in the dream that would be less threatening to you, maybe less traumatic in some senses, so that they can create a more holistic environment to have a positive experience between yourself and them. This may manifest in the way of seeing more extraterrestrial craft in your dreams. This may manifest in the way of you being aboard a craft and having some sort of, more often than not, medical interaction with these beings. This may be a face-to-face encounter with an extraterrestrial that maybe looks humanoid. They may look very foreign to you, but this is a common space that they can tap into in your dream space and have direct interactions with you. Now, we perceive them as a work of fiction because we understand dreams as being, fabrications of your subconscious and your emotional outlet, but they are a very real experience. They're just focused in a different dimension, which makes them feel less tangible. So anytime that you have an interaction with an extraterrestrial being in your dreams, it's another very specific, synchronized, and deliberate interaction. It's not a mistake. It's not an accident. These are your friends. These are your family making contact. Let's talk about open contact in our physical waking life. This does happen. This is a real occurrence. But due to the fact that we as individuals and we as a collective species aren't ready for open extraterrestrial contact the way that you've seen it in films and television, due to the fact that we're not quite there yet in our own personal evolution and our collective evolution as a species, we don't have open face-to-face contact yet. We do have it, however, in such a way that we don't remember. Now, the reason why we don't remember these things is a lot of these beings, not even speaking in terms of a technology, but they have the ability to superimpose what you would understand as amnesia. This is a collective agreement between you and the being, so they're not superimposing like a memory wipe, okay? It's more of a form of very light amnesia that works like this. Let's say you have an encounter with your star family, and it's a loving and it's a peaceful exchange that you have in a very physical, real way. After the interaction is done, what they will do is they will apply an amnesia. And what this amnesia does is it promotes you to forget the interaction due to the fact that we are not individually prepared to integrate with them in a societal way or in a collective way. It's not conducive for us to have these interactions and remember them and go tell all our friends and family and make YouTube videos about, oh, I hung out with, a gray, or, a Zeta Reticuli is their more scientific term. It's not relevant for us at this time to have those types of open contacts. It doesn't mean that we're not having them, but they're more private. They're more secretive. We do forget them after the interaction is over. Now, we will start to remember these interactions more and more as time goes on, once it becomes more relevant. The last topic I'm going to discuss regarding contact is what will it look like when it does happen in an open way. We do remember these interactions, and they are landing on our planet in parks and in public places, and they're exiting their craft, and we're shaking hands with these beings. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like. We've seen films, we've seen television shows where extraterrestrials come to our planet, and some of them are peaceful and some of them are hostile. And so we have all of these ideas and these are interpretations of what that may or may not look like, but none of us truly know how it will happen. I personally believe that it will happen in small incremental ways that will be minimally invasive up until the point where they're landing and we're shaking hands with them. Once we make a form of open contact, I believe that they may come to us through technology. They may send pictures. They may send audio recordings. They may even show video clips through our televisions. They may show them through the internet, because I feel personally that this might be a minimally invasive way to have that type of contact, as opposed to one just teleporting into your house and saying hello. I believe that it will start small and it will build until we are vibrationally ready to experience these beings face to face. There has been some discussion within these communities that are passionate about the concept of extraterrestrials as to when this may happen. When might we be ready as a collective and as individuals to start having open contact in a physical way that we remember and we can recall? The numbers are anywhere between 2027 and 2033. Those are the years that some predictions have been made that we would be ready as individuals slightly sooner and ready as a collective within that time span of 2027 to 2033. This, of course, is a prediction. That number could be sooner. That number could be later. It's all contingent on what we do as individuals and what we do as a collective species to promote the type of planet that these beings feel comfortable and safe visiting. The second topic that I'm going to discuss is the concept of channeling. I'm going to break it down as a science and a phenomenon and why it's important to me. I first discovered channeling through the Seth Speaks material, and from there it led me to Abraham Hicks and Bashar and Cryon and other various beings and collectives channeled by other channelers all over the world. After learning so many powerful concepts by studying channeled material, I was inspired to teach myself how to channel, and I produced a film that somewhat depicts that journey called Those Who Seek. The idea of spreading an awareness on channeling itself through my art was exciting to me, and that's ultimately why I learned to channel to begin with. So how does channeling work as a science? Well, many people have their own methods and approaches to get into the channeling state. There's also several different channeling states themselves, but let's break it down as a science. It really comes down to brainwaves and awareness. Now, we have core fundamental brainwaves. We have alpha, beta, delta, theta, gamma. Well, we know that the beta state is the brainwave state that we fundamentally operate in at any given moment. When you're in your waking life, you're in your beta frequency. Then there's the alpha, and there's theta, and there's delta, and gamma. We can actually do forms of conscious channeling in any of these particular states outside of the delta and the gamma, and I'll explain why. When I first learned how to channel, I learned through the Seth material that when you alter your brainwave frequency through breathing patterns and visualizations, you can very easily shift your focus and your brainwave frequency into the alpha state. It was within the alpha state that I was personally using that particular brainwave frequency to play with manifestation techniques. Once I worked within the alpha state to use various manifestation techniques, I then learned that we could also use these brainwave frequencies to communicate to other forms of consciousness, whether that be another being, whether that be an extraterrestrial, whether that be a spirit guide or your own higher mind. I learned that through brainwave frequencies, we're altering our focus, we're raising our ability to perceive higher frequencies. much like you would understand a Wi-Fi signal. It sends and receives data. You can pick up your cell phone and you can place a phone call. Well, channeling works in a very similar way. What you're doing is you're using your pineal gland or your third eye. You're using your physical vessel as a radio tower that's fundamentally sending and receiving data. And the way that you do this is by altering your vibrational frequency and your brainwaves. Once you learn how to achieve a specific brainwave frequency, you can do this through breathing, you can do this through visualization. You can actually learn how to do it at will. And then you'll learn the strength and the power to each of these brainwave frequencies. Now, it's to my specific experience that you can do conscious channeling in the alpha and the theta states. You can even receive intuition in your conscious beta states as well. And then the gamma frequency is where we're doing what's called as trance channeling. This is somewhat of a self-hypnosis where you're in a trance, and it's at that time that your own persona is checked out. You're off to the side, you're in the corner of the room, and you're opening up your vessel to receive the consciousness of another being. My particular method that I use to channel is I use particular breathing and visualization techniques. Through the process of deep, repetitive breathing, making my back straight and my diaphragm straight, I breathe deeply and repetitively through the back of my throat, while I'm also visualizing my space and surroundings sort of dissolving, sort of creating a void around myself. And at the same time, I'm reaching for a specific being to speak with. So it's a multi-step mechanism that's happening simultaneously to ultimately turn the body, turn the brain, turn the pineal gland into a cell phone. As I'm going through my breathing process and my visualizations, I will be calling for a specific entity to make contact with. And once the body is ready, I kind of just kick into that phone call, that channeling state. Whether I'm semi-conscious or whether it's a full trance, it's at that time that the being comes through, and in a sense, we're cohabitating my space. We're sharing the space to create a communication. So why is channeling important? Why is it relevant? Well, the reason that channeling is exciting to me, and the reason that I think it's very important to us as individuals and as a collective, is that channeling is a way to make open contact to extraterrestrial beings. It's a way to make open contact to your spirit guides. It's a way to make open contact to beings in other densities and dimensions that can communicate to you in this way. It's almost like the one way that we have to reach the other side. It's the way that we have right now to contact spirit. So much of the information that I've learned and that I've channeled myself has served me in a positive way. It's benefited my life. I've learned completely new ways of thinking and new ways of being. I've learned very positive, powerful tools from the beings that I've channeled and the beings that I've enjoyed listening to through other channelers. So much so that it's changed my life in such a powerful way. I feel that channeled material is a way of discovering more about the universe and more about ourselves. Now, when I first started channeling, I first made contact with my spirit guides. I was able to communicate directly to my spiritual team. And with their assistance, they led me into channeling the very first extraterrestrial being. His name is Hermes. Hermes is a benevolent, very loving reptilian being from the Orion system. His planet and his entire collective species is called the Za. They associate both their species and their planet under that one name. They do still experience themselves throughout their collective as individuals, much like we do. So this particular being, he likes to be called Hermes after the messenger. This was the first being that I made contact with in my channeling, and he is the one that I channel in my film Those Who Seek. If the concept of channeling is interesting to you, I'd highly suggest that you teach yourself how to do it in whatever method that you're comfortable with. This will help you make contact and strengthen your connections to your own star family and many other beings throughout other densities and dimensions that can help strengthen your ability to navigate your life. You can also check out my film, Those Who Seek. You can watch it for free online. This will give you a better insight into my own particular journey into channeling. My third topic that I'm going to discuss is the concept of ascension. And in addition, we're going to discuss disclosure, what that means, and how the two work together. Ascension. Many people have heard about this concept and they have their different ideas and definitions of what this means. Here's what it means to me. Ascension is the process of expanding our own individual and collective consciousness to the awareness that we are ourselves God. We are Source, experiencing itself from an infinite number of perspectives. Through the process of waking up to this truth, one of the natural mechanics that happens is the evolution of our physical bodies transforming into lighter densities and higher dimensions. Another major aspect in the process of ascension can be waking up to the idea or the concept that we live in what's called as a matrix of programs and systems that are seemingly negative once we discover their existence, but are actually just props in the game of ascension. So first we realize that physical reality is a hologram. We live in a matrix. And then we discover that there are beings who manipulate those matrices and manipulate these programs in an oppressive and controlling way. They create systems like war, religion, healthcare, politics, and the government. So who are these beings that manipulate the matrix? Some call them the cabal, some call them the Illuminati, the elites. Now they're being called the deep state. These beings can be broken down into a tier system. First, you're going to have malevolent human beings. These particular humans within these organizations and these secret societies, they're commonly tied to old, very ancient bloodlines connected to extraterrestrial beings that predate the human inception. Then you have what's called as the Khazarian Mafia. The Khazarian Mafia is a hard term to find. You could dig around for it, but you're not going to find too much information about it in public platforms. The Khazarian Mafia consists of mostly non-human, malevolent-based extraterrestrial beings. Not just one any given race, but there are many that work with human beings that exist within these particular factions. Above the Khazarian Mafia, you have the Alpha Draconians. These are a very popular species. Many people have heard of these particular beings. These are reptilian. If you're familiar with particular sources of disclosure and conspiracy theory concepts on the reptilian agenda, well, these are your Alpha Draconians. These are very real physical beings. They originate from the Orion systems. Lastly, we have the Archons. Now it's said that the Archons are plasmatic, non-physical beings. And these particular entities, what they do is they feed on the negative emotions and the more lower vibrational fear-based frequencies that we as human beings emit from just having a physical experience, having our life play out within those particular systems that I mentioned before. Next, I want to talk about the concept of disclosure. So what is disclosure itself? Disclosure is the process of first discovering that these systems exist, discovering that this matrix that we all live in exists, and then we start to break it down. We start to understand it. We start to see in all the ways that these particular systems that I've mentioned no longer serve us. We start to see in which ways that they hold us back and they oppress us in certain ways. Many people in the disclosure community would say that these particular systems, these structures, these programs that we all live in are keeping us in a form of slavery. Disclosure is the truth. It's the truth of what's happening behind the curtain. Disclosure is the concept of what's really going on, who's responsible for it, and how do we free ourselves from it. You see a lot of disclosure through what I call the truther community, but what's more popularly known as conspiracy theorists, people who have conspiracy theories. Much what I'm saying sounds like a conspiracy theory, but we would like to call ourselves more specifically truthers, because what we're doing is we're looking for the truth and exposing it in whatever way that we can to help wake people up. Two of the more well-known organizations that work towards exposing a lot of these negative systems are Q and Anonymous. You can research both Q and Anonymous to find their platforms. I feel that they work very efficiently in waking people up to the particular people who are responsible for crimes against humanity and helping empower us on a wide scale in what we can do to resolve these issues and combat them to help free ourselves. Now, one thing that the cabal or these elites do is they have to disclose their particular agendas to the very beings that they're working to enslave. It's almost like a universal law of balance. They have to tell us what they're doing. It's part of the law. But this doesn't mean that they have to disclose their particular agendas in an honest or a truthful way. So what they do is they hide their agendas right in front of us in plain sight. The way that they do this is they depict what they're doing in works of fiction. So why do they do it this way? Well, they tell us the truth in plain sight about extraterrestrials, the secret space programs, advanced and suppressed technologies, the holographic matrix, and even the power of our mind. And they do this through the form of entertainment. So that the second we see these movies or these TV shows, we instantly classify them as works of fiction, not something that we would see in our everyday life or even something that we would understand as being part of our reality. They depict real facts through movies and television in such a way that either scares us so that we're too afraid to ever believe that it's real, or they depict it in such a way that's so fantastic that we would never imagine seeing that in our lifetime. This is their way of hiding the truth in plain sight, but depicting it in such a way that it elicits or invokes a very specific response that they want out of us. These particular responses are commonly fear, anger, hate, doubt, disbelief, or conformity. Now, I'm an actor and a filmmaker, and it's my mission to fundamentally perform the same task that they're doing. Only I'm not using fear and illusion in my films. I'm creating self-empowerment and sovereignty so that not only as individuals, but we as a collective can reclaim our godship, the same godship that they use to make us think that they have all the power. You see, the beings that I channel, they also used entertainment to aid them in their own respective ascensional journey. So it's my mission that through entertainment, I can help wake you up to these concepts so that you can reclaim your power and your sovereignty. In my symposium, I covered the concept of extraterrestrials, channeling, and ascension through mainstream media. I hope that you take what resonates with you and leave the rest. You see, the process of the expansion of our consciousness is a unique journey to each and every one of us. I plan to continue producing films on these concepts, and I'm also producing my own web series that will cover these topics and more. Thank you very much for connecting with me, and remember that you are loved, you are free, and you are Source itself. Remind yourself that whenever you need strength. Peace.